Just in case you've been living underwater for the past few months, Shawnee Johnson used to be Cavan's best footballer. Then he was told the county team no longer wanted him, so he decided to set sail for Kildare instead. The voyage has been far from smooth though. There have been more storms than this great ship ever saw on those infamous Atlantic crossings. Along the way, he's had to navigate the rough seas of 2 transfer request refusals and 2 failed appeals. Johnson's dream of playing for Kildare seems scuttled, but his perseverance was finally rewarded when his latest appeal won in a technicality. Sadly for him, the matter isn't finished yet because another appeal is pending. But don't for a minute think that this is just a local issue between a player and 2 counties. What happens in the end with Shawnee Johnson has far-reaching implications for the core values of the GAA. This is another example of GAA tradition being challenged by some of its own members. On one side, there are those who say that the connection to your home county is what makes the GAA great, and diluting it damages the very ethos of the games. On the other side, those who support Shawnee say you can't very well blame him for wanting to continue playing at the highest level when he's been denied that opportunity by his home county. But has a dangerous precedent been set? Is the GAA sailing into uncharted waters where the county no longer picks the player, but the player picks the county?
Yes, indeed, the Shawnee Johnston affair. Cian, can you give us the very latest? Because it is quite a complicated saga, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite complex, and as John just made reference to, that there's another appeal, basically, and Shawnee was successful with his appeal last week, but the CCC have asked for further clarification from the CAC as to why they basically allowed it, which was basically on the premise that Cavan and the club didn't object within 10 days. But there's a lot more to it. That's what the CCC are saying. And look, it's been going on for the last 5 months. It's going to rumble on more. And I'd say it'll probably end up with another alphabet, which is the DRA.
OK, well, we're waiting the result, of course, from that CAC. Kevin, do you support Shawnee Johnson in his quest to transfer to Kildare?
I do, yeah. I'd be sympathetic towards him on the basis that, you know, he's one of Cavan's top players, and he was told that he wasn't wanted by the previous manager and now the current manager. So in my opinion, you know, a guy who's able to play at that level, you want to challenge yourself and you want to play county football, then he's entitled to move on. I know we don't want the case where, you know, if boys are switching counties, you know, just for success and that there, but it'd be a different story if Shawnee Johnson wanted away and Cavan wanted him, but they don't want him, so he's entitled to go.
Kevin, you had your own falling out with your manager. Would you consider transferring to another county? Yeah,
it's something I spoke about, you know, to people who asked me when this saga was going on, you know, but if I was younger, I'd definitely have to consider it. You know, I'm 30 now, it'd be difficult for me to up sticks and move and to some other county and settle in that, but Shawnee's a lot younger, he has a lot more to offer, you know, years down the line, so definitely something that if you're told you're not wanted, you know, obviously I love playing for my county and my club and everything, but if you want to continue playing at that level, then you have to go elsewhere.
Do you have the same view, Cian?
I don't really share Kevin's view on it, to be fair. I think it is a tricky one because, you know, it's a dangerous precedent that could be set. You know, you see it very often with small rural clubs that, you know, some of their best players transfer to, say, the larger town team or just maybe to a neighbouring team because they want to play maybe senior football and their own club is junior, and it's dangerous. I think it is maybe the situation where they have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. I would be an advocate of maybe a parent rule or a grandparent rule, whereby, you know, if I have kids and I'm living in a neighbouring parish, you know, and my children want to play for my home club, then I think they should be allowed because they have, you know, that sort of connection and feeling for the parish and for the club and for the team, and that's what the GAA is all about. You know, other sports have a different ethos. This is what makes the GAA so special, and you know, it's why people support county teams in droves and why they get so emotionally attached to the whole thing. So that's the way I'd like to see it anyway.
But you're a Meath footballer. Would you be happy to see an outsider coming into your squad?
No, I wouldn't, to be honest. I think again you do have to look at the circumstances. If there's a fella who maybe is living in Navan, is maybe, you know, transferred to a club and is playing for a season or two, and he wants to transfer to Meath, then if he's good enough, maybe he'll be selected. But you know, if you're going to be transferring counties like that, I just doesn't sit well with me. Now I know this is kind of an awkward one because he hasn't been picked by Cavan, And, you know, as a general rule of thumb, if a guy is good enough to play county football, his own county is going to pick him.
I think that's the big point there, that he's not being picked.
But it's not the first time, Kevin, that we've had this. I mean, a lot of people in Kildare will point to Larry Tompkins going down to Cork, right? There's a huge difference, obviously. Larry Tompkins played for a club at Castlehaven beforehand. He immersed himself in West Cork society. He was working there as a carpenter. At 2 o'clock in the day, he was in a kitchen in West Cork doing carpentry work. Shawnee Johnson's still teaching in Cavan at 2 o'clock in the day. I mean, it's totally artificial. But you had one where Larry, let's say, he dropped Colin Corkery in 98 and 99. Colin Corkery didn't look to go play elsewhere. Colin Corkery said, you know what, Larry, I'm going to show you. They met 2 years later, and Corkery went on to play the best football of his life over the next 3 years. I mean, there's a case for Shawnee to have a look in the mirror as to why Cavan did let him go. You'd love to see Shawnee Johnson playing into county football, but the reality is, if he's allowed to go wherever he is, it leads to possibly the breakdown of the county system.
That's very true, Cian, because even within Meath last year, you know, we had 2 guys that were left off the panel, you know, after the league, which was Chris O'Connor and Mickey Burke. And, you know, from a player's perspective, I would have played with them for a few seasons previously, and it was a big shock to us within the panel as players that they had been deemed, you know, surplus to requirements. They knuckled down, and both of them ended up playing championship for Meath last year, got back into the squad. So there is an element to that where sometimes if you're not picked, you have to look within. Now, it's very difficult to, you know, we're kind of casting aspersions here on Shawnee Johnson's character and things like that, and I don't think that's fair.
No, it's not, and
you know,
you have to say, like, if we were just saying that if we were talking about soccer and like, should Dempsey leave Fulham, you'd say, yeah, that's a sign of ambition, because that's the ethos in that sport. I mean, you are looking at Shawnee Johnson has yet to play a championship game in Croke Park. You know, he is a Croke Park player, but he's not the first player like this. Unfortunately, it's just that the collective overrules the right of the individual in the J. It's different in other sports.
I don't think it's right that somebody, you know, both managers now are able to turn around and say to this guy, yeah, there may be questions over, you know, his leadership capabilities on the field and whatever, but, you know, he's one of Cavan's best players. Like, you know, we can't deny that, and, you know, we all want to see the best players playing. And I just think, just on a personal, you know, on a humane basis, somebody to tell you that you can't play when you're good enough to play, that's why I would side with Shawnee Johnson, and I think he's entitled to say, well, you know, my own county don't want me. He stated that he wants to play. If they don't want him, then, you know, that's their hard luck, and he moves on.
Do you see it as a once-off?
I think, as Cian said there, it's a case by case. This is totally different to anybody, you know, asking for a transfer, asking to leave their own county. You know, Cavan County Board didn't object, or Cavan County Gaels, you know.
You know, like, did Shawnee go and make a case to Terry Hyland after, you know, Val stepped aside, you know, because it was Val's ultimate decision. I just think that it is creating a precedent here that you could have, look, we want to see a player of that calibre playing, but, you know, the ethos as the GAA is set up that you play with your own county, and the reality is, like, it's not like Shawnee went and up sticks to live in Kildare society the way that Shea Fahy.
Kevin, if I can ask you, since you're here, would you ever play with Donegal again? Would you like to play with Donegal again?
Of course I would love to play for Donegal again, but the suppose the issue is, like with myself and Jim McGuinness made his decision. You know, Jim's there for 5 years, so that takes me up to 34, so it's out of the question, you know. And I think,
is there any chance of a resolution at all here?
No, and I suppose the two cases are similar, because what happened with us and what happened with Shawnee Johnson, this could have been sorted out, you know, in-house, kept in-house. The county board should involve, the club should have got involved, sat the two boys down, Shawnee and the manager. And, you know, I think that's a part of a manager's job as well. You have to deal with all kind of characters and personalities. And
so, as you say, I mean, I just know from talking to people in DCU, and okay, the Cavan boys would have been disappointed maybe with Shawnee. Like, he has gone from being the captain, #1 on the panel last year, to not being outside the panel. Like, the DCU guys rave about him as a leader. So, like, it just seems to be that, as you said, that conversation. I would love if Terry Hyland and Shawnee had that conversation. Because
do you see that as the solution, going back to Cavan? Do you think
it's going to be very hard now? I think it's just escalated. Like, the guy who wanted to play football, there was an offer in Kildare who, let's say, are open to the possibility of guys from other counties playing for them. He was possibly a bit flattered by it. They are a Croke Park team. He's a Croke Park player. Again, though, we go back to the ethos of the J, and that's what ultimately will be, I think, why it'll go to the DRA.
Cian, I don't know, I think it's kind of fear-mongering a bit. I think that most lads will still rather play with their own club and play with their own county. I would be sceptical as to whether it will open the floodgates. I still think that people want to play with that. That's what the GAA is all about. It's all about heart. It's about it's about your own locality, it's about your people. So you're not going to want to play with another county. Like, even if you could play at a higher level, a lot of lads won't want to just leave their own county in the lurch. They'll say, well, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to fight and I'm going to keep playing, and hopefully we will improve.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, without a doubt, you miss it. You know, the training and being in good shape and that there. But you know, other things in life take over. And you know, when you're immersed in a county squad, you think there's nothing else matters in the world. But once you step away from that, you realise that there's other things going on in life that you carry on with. But just before we finish up, I suppose, in the Shawnee thing, like, I'd be interested to know if it wasn't Kildare, if it was a lesser team, would there be such a fuss about it? You'd have probably gone through and there'd be no word about it.
Finally, what is likely to happen? Very briefly.
Yeah, it'll ultimately, I'd say, go to the DRA, and they will rule, because there's cases, and it early needs that to weigh up all the evidence and the arguments.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about this saga. In the meantime, the championship is cranking up a gear, and this weekend sees a big game in the Leinster Hurling Championship between Offaly and Wexford. It's a game that brings back memories of when these two were top of the Leinster pile.
Offaly were, you know, reigning Leinster champions. They were All-Ireland champions in '94, red-hot favourites. Traditionally, we would have ended up with a lot of hope and rather than expectation. Nobody on the team had ever won anything, from the oldest guy to the youngest guy in the field, so everything was sort of new to us. I do remember picking up the bus. Liam came down to us, said, right, everybody off the bus, and I have to say, I thought he'd lost it again, and we disembarked, and he just gave one of those great epic Al Pacino type speeches where you could hear a pin drop. He talked about the blood that ran through our veins, about what it meant to be essentially Wexford people, that we were fighting people. Now today we were walking out of the county and we weren't walking back unless we had won the Leinster title. It was just epic, like, you know, you could really sense that today was going to be special. Larry Gorman then started tumming, as Larry does, and two cars pulled in. The first car, the guy jumped out of the car and he says, right, everybody out, and he started throwing the family out of the car, and he said the bus had broken down. So I think Larry had to go up to him and say to him, no, we're already messing. And I can remember Liam Griffin saying, you know, one of the greatest speeches of all time ruined within 30 seconds.
Match referee is Aidan McSurda, refereeing his second Leinster final. Last time was '94 between these two teams.
It was one of those typical July summer days, very, very hot. I would have been under a bit of pressure. I would have been, on the day, picked to mark Brian Whelan, who, as everybody knows, was legendary at the time. So he's the type of player that would end a career rather than make a career. My strength would have been in the air and then running at the fences. And I remember just getting this ball and taking on Brian Whelan, going past him, and then running towards the goal. But I remember in the corner of my eye, the full back, I knew he was going to come out and meet me. But I just remember trying to flick the ball over his head, and he just caught me in the chest. Now, at the time, it was soft or dubious, to say the least, but still. Damien Fitzhenry came up, and our penalty taker, and Damien made no mistake. He'd never missed a penalty in training, and he wasn't going to start there.
That's not going to lift Wexford nothing, really.
You know, you knew you were part of something special as the game evolved. It was really, really tight. We kind of hit a real purple patch, which Offaly couldn't sort of stop.
Tears in the eyes of our Wexford men already.
A turning point for me in the game was Adrian Fenlon hit one of those majestic cuts, as he always hit, and the ball went in around the square. Gary Laffin got a touch on it, and I think Tom Dempsey just fell over and it accidentally hit him in the head and landed in the net. And I think from then we felt we were going to win something. There was just a point where Offaly just seemed to sort of just stop, and we went into a kind of our sixth gear, and we just seemed to, everything we touched seemed to just go over the bar, and we just went 5 points, 6, 7, 8 points up. And with 90 seconds, 2 minutes left in the match, I just remember this invasion down on the side of the pitch.
The whole side, it's all over, Shawnee. Wexford are Leinster champions.
As soon as that final whistle went, you know, there was just this mass Braveheart scene of thousands of Wexford people rushing onto the field. It was such a unique experience for the people of Wexford that they had gone so long without seeing silverware. I think there was always a joke is that Wexford had never won anything in colour. It was always in black and white. So this is the first time people had seen colour and Wexford winning anything in colour.
Yes, indeed. There's plenty of colour down in Wexford, the purple and gold. Cian, in 1996, Wexford kind of came out of the blue, really, their success, and indeed Offaly as well were very strong at that time. Is there any possibility at all that Wexford or Offaly could indeed emerge from Leinster this year?
Not this year. No, in fairness to the 96 team, I know they had poor, disappointing years in 94, 95, but 93 they'd been involved in epic league finals and Leinster finals. The nucleus of those teams were still there in 96. So, whereas this team is coming from a much lower base, and the same with the Offaly team. So no, but I do think we saw footage there of Liam Dunn there. I think he's the right man for Wexford hurling at the moment. You know, we were talking about even Kildare football there. That's a team that's been building for 3 or 4 years. Like, it doesn't happen in 1 year. Wexford hurling won't happen in 1 year. But I think under Liam, I could see them being possibly over the next 3 years being back to reaching maybe the odd All-Ireland quarter-final and semi-final, which Wexford haven't done in too long, beyond 07, I think.
Is it Kilkenny's to lose? I mean,
Leinster.
Dublin and Galway are in Leinster as well.
The game of all the provincial games I'm looking forward to the most is, with respect to Laois, Dublin, you would expect to take them at the weekend. Dublin, Kilkenny is going to be a cracker in Tullamore. And if Kilkenny weather that, you would fancy them then to go on to win the whole lot. You know, like they're awesome. But I think Dublin are primed for a date. They've kind of got under Daly the old championship mentality of the date, June 23rd, we're ready to go. And it's going to be like the old days, like that, you know, with Daly back, and we've got Liam Dunn back. And I think it's great for Wexford hurling that Liam Dunn's over that team.
I get the clear impression you're going for Wexford.
Yeah, it'll be very close. Wexford Offaly games are, but Wexford have a good record with them in championship. They haven't lost them in the last 4 championship encounters since 03, and also they even beat them in the league. And even I know that in 96 early season games were huge for Wexford, having the confidence to beat Offaly at that time. And I think just it'll be close, but I do think Wexford.
Okay. Now there are 4 football championship games of the weekend, and top billing goes to All-Ireland champions Dublin, who take the first steps to defend their crown against Louth. Kevin, do you think Dublin can have the same hunger? Is hunger a vital ingredient in this year's championship for the Dubs?
Yeah, without a doubt, that's a big question for them. Like, they have the squad, they have the talent. It's just to put the hunger and to put two I suppose, successful years back to back. I think personally they'll even struggle maybe in Leinster this year, you know, early on, and that might be a bad thing for them to get out and get out in the road for a while, because you know, I think that's the big question mark over this year. Will they have the hunger and the desire to drive on to do back to back?
Kieran, you're not just a journalist but a psychologist with the Mayo football team as well. Give us a snapshot of the mindset of the Dubs as they face in after the great success of last year.
I honestly think they're in a great position because they played some fantastic football in the league as well. Okay, they had some disappointing games like in Castlebar, but you got to remember they were without the Brogans. Those 2 guys are 2 of the best 5 footballers in the country. You know, you're talking about just a completely different team with those 2 guys to go with. And, you know, we talk a lot about the hunger. The confidence they got from last year is huge. And I think they have enough reservoir of confidence on the basis of that and their dominance in Leinster over the last few years to withstand, as Kevin says, maybe they'll go through the backdoor route, but they're going to be in the last 4, and any team that beats them won't beat them by more than a kick of a ball. And I think they're going to actually improve this year. I think this team, if you were told that there's one team over the next 5 years going to win 3 All-Irelands, be either themselves or Cork. This Dublin team, this is going to be a huge year in their development, and I can see them being in the last 4 for sure, and no one will beat them easy.
Would you agree with that, Cian, that Dublin are going to be thereabouts again?
Yeah, you'd have to think so. You would have to think so, particularly with the confidence they would have gained after last year. I suppose they really built up to it last season, you know, and it wasn't just a one-season job, but last season there was a huge level of consistency to what they were doing, and they've tried out a lot of new players in the league, and that can only strengthen their hand. And like Kieran was saying, when you play a lot of those games without Bernard Brogan and Alan Brogan, and you can bring them back into the fold, that just lifts the whole thing. Like, I mean, 2 fantastic footballers.
I think it's actually good for their evolution that 2 boys weren't there. I mean, even in the few games that O'Gara got, he stood up, and Connolly played well. And you know, often there's that tendency to defer to the main men. The boys didn't need another league campaign. I think the team needed a league without them, but they need them for championship.
I think the question mark is, Pat Gilroy said himself, as the game was like Mayo, they had no intensity, and he says when they play without intensity, they're a normal team. And it's that intensity, that real hunger and drive. You know, you have they've one of the best panels in the country, but to have that intensity and drive for the whole year, you know, if they don't have that, to become a normal team, like, which is out there, that's the danger.
Cian, I know you were involved in the controversy 2 years ago with Louth, Meath, where last year you fairly hammered Louth. Do you think they're gone back?
Oh, geez, not if the last league game is out in the go by.
League and Championship, 2 different things?
Yeah, league and Championship are 2 totally different things, but they gave us a fair trim in Navan, and they are a good team. Like, they are a good team. Paddy Keenan and Ronan Carroll in midfield for them have been very solid. They contributed a lot going forward to them. And if those boys can get in behind the Dublin midfield, you know, and start running at the Dublin defence and hitting them on the break, which is probably what they're going to try and attempt to do, then they can certainly cause them problems. You know, in the inside line, they have dangerous forwards. They have skillful footballers. The real thing is, can their defence hold out the wave of Dublin attack? And you know, I would have question marks over that. I would predict that Dublin will win the game, but I certainly wouldn't be writing off Louth. I think Louth are a really good team, and you know, the first round game, they have a game behind them, and that was a tough game to get over. I mean, it was in the 74th minute or something they got the winning goal. So, like, that builds character in a team, and Dublin have been sitting idle for a long time, and you can play all the A and B games you want in training. Nothing is going to replicate what happens on Championship Day.
But you're going for Dublin.
But I am still going for Dublin.
Kevin, Dublin or Louth?
Dublin by a few.
Dublin, so that's 2. Will you make it unanimous?
Oh, you'd have to.
Okay. Now, we've only had a few Championship matches so far, but you've noticed a trend developing in football so far, haven't you, Kieran?
Well, no, I think the Championship so far has had some decent games, but I suppose, look, a big aspect I think at the moment is that midfield isn't as big as it used to be. A lot of the top teams now, it's basically the turnover count is huge on it, and I think, like, basically teams that have why we have a lot of scoring from the half backs is the way that they're able to actually just counter. I mean, you have Kildare racking up huge scores. That was the one big trend I thought for Dublin in the league, was that, okay, they didn't have the Brogans up front, but they were getting more scores from the middle third, particularly the half back line. So I think that's a huge trend, and a lot of that is coming from turnovers after the ball is won. You know, like, I would say that'll be any team who wants to be up there has to have